Percy and Cox combo can repeat that in the race, an entirely different matter. Well, just 25 points separating 5 drivers contending the title as they come here with 2 rounds of the series left to go. So as we speed up onto the grid, ready for the start, the pace car's pulled off. There's still everything to play for. The red lights are on. And that's why Martin Kerner decided not to try and overtake the Porsche at that stage. They went green, and so we have a race on our hands. Wyn Percy leads John Morrison through the first corner. All looks fairly safe so far, riding with Nick Carr, who shares the number 33 Lucent Technologies markers with Bob Sands. Just a couple of spots ahead of him was his teammate. But already the awesome power of the 911 allows John Morrison to cruise serenely past. Well, I wonder what Wyn Percy can do. Hard on the brakes, the number 33 Marcos goes down the inside of the Jaguar. Picks up the place from Brazilian Thomas Erdos, who'll hand over to Alan Lloyd later on. Wyn Percy, the wastegate chattering away on the Ford-powered Harrier, chasing desperately, trying not to let John Morrison get too far away. Riding again with the Marcos, and again Steve O'Rourke runs a little wide in the MK 911. And the Marcos on this tight and twisty track having a very good showing already. Here comes the third place TVR, 4th is the Lotus, 5th is Andy Purvis in the other Marcos, and he started behind the Porsche of Steve O'Rourke, so he's already worked his way past, and it looks as though O'Rourke is about to lose another place as well. Well, Wyn Percy is hanging on to the coattails of John Morrison at the moment, but I wonder for how long. You can see how hard he's having to work the Harrier to stay in contention, really hard on the brakes. We ride with Martin Kerner, chasing the TVR. And there is Torquil Tiring, number 10. He'll hand over the Di Tommaso to Christian Van later on in the race. John Morrison and John Greasley have been driving these Blue Coral cars a long time together, have plenty of experience, not much, it must be said, of the 911 GT1. Martin Kerner fairly new to the Lotus, and he has dropped a place as well. We just saw Andy Purvis going past from that inboard. Still the first 2 running away at the front of the field. They really are in a different league in terms of speed. And the grumbling TVR makes its presence heard, if not seen, in 3rd place. This track very small for a car that was designed to win Le Mans, of course. That's giving the Harrier a chance. Riding again with the number 33 Marcos. He's already passed Steve O'Rourke, so O'Rourke is heading backwards, and O'Rourke and his teammate Tim Sugden, championship challengers here, will want to stay in contact if they possibly can. O'Rourke now even coming under threat at the tail of the field from the Di Tommaso, so he must have a problem of some kind. And it must be said that the Blue Coral colours really complement the shape of the 911 GT1. Riding again with the Lotus. And there is Andy Purvis ahead of us. Purvis really flying, the 56 Marcos. Lucent Technologies cars run from Mallory Park. And they've been a feature of the championship all the way through the season. Andy Purvis starting, hands over to Ian Astley midway through the race. And the Perv intending on keeping the car in as high a position as he can. Now running nose to tail with 3rd place man Colin Blower in the TVR, so 2 V8 engine, front engine British sports cars running 3rd and 4th, but the 2 mid-engined turbo beasts out front a long way ahead. And already in amongst the slower traffic, Jamie Maserati putting his car onto the grass to stay as much out of the way as he possibly can. Over gentlemanly driving as Wyn Percy looks to the inside. Wyn Percy takes the lead, and grass and mud flying up from the 911 GT1 as John Morrison has to resort to only keeping 2 of his wheels on the track rather than having a major collision. So Wyn Percy really abusing the Harrier on the brakes, dives down the inside at the hairpin and picks up the lead. Simon Durden going through in the 0 car, the Darrion T90. And a spin. What a disappointment then for Nick Carr. Spun the Marcos and all his hard work has been thrown away. He'll be cursing himself. And the team watched it all happen from the pit wall. I think they'll be cursing him as well. Meanwhile, here is the battle with the 56 car. Andy Purvis still ahead of Martin Kerner in the Lotus Esprit. And Wyn Percy still ahead of John Morrison in the Harrier as well. The Harrier leading the race. Replay now from on board with Nick Carr as the former Rover racer gets it all wrong. Too much power too soon. And the Marcos is swapping ends. Jamie Maserati again using the mirrors and allowing Colin Blower to rush through. Well, Blower has eased out a big margin in third place. Fourth place is still the number 56 Marcos, but he's some distance from being able to challenge Blower and now has more on his mind in terms of Martin Kerner. We ride with Kerner. And using the Lotus's nimbler handling to slide down the inside of the hairpin. Will he be able to hold it all together? He gets the power down nice and early. Jamie Maserati on the left there will prevent the Marcos coming alongside. So he holds on to fourth place. Kerner fourth in the Lotus. Down to fifth goes Andy Purvis in the Marcos. Third place, Colin Blower. And he'll hand over to TBR Tuscan Challenge racer Jamie Campbell-Walter. Up ahead of us as we ride with Nick Carr is the Di Tommaso Pantera of Torquil Tyrring. And Tyrring wagging the tail as he gets all the awesome V8 power down out of that tight right-hand corner at the end of the straight. But the better developed chassis on the Marcos showing its ability. And Nick Carr picks up the position from Torquil Tyrring. Now back into the top 10. And the next target ahead of us is the Darien. The Darien T90, the GT racing version of the Darien race and rally car, built by Tim Duffy, and this car engineered by the Swansea Institute of Engineering. Nothing like having a practical side to your education. And still Wyn Percy holding this slender margin over John Morrison. Now whether Charlie Cox will be able to continue in the lead after the pit stops remains to be seen. A lot will depend on how the teams handle the cars when they come in for their driver changeovers. Again, the marshals ever vigilant, waving the blue flags. And the headlights ablaze on the Harrier and its bright yellow colour, alerting even the least attentive wing mirror watcher to the fact that the leader is approaching. Thomas Erdos in the number 6 Jaguar XJ220. They're worried about the engine in that car. Apparently it's run for over 27 hours. That time for a 6,000-mile oil change, I would have thought. Through Clairvaux and out of the tight right-hander at Hawthorne we go, courtesy of Nick Carr. Through the chicane, and then onto the long back straight, passing the secondary set of pits, through the kink and then back down the gearbox, hard on the brake for Tower Bend. Awkward to judge, right-hander, closing all the time on the little turbocharged Darien ahead of us. And the Jaguar, like the 911 Porsche, really built for a much longer, much faster flowing circuit than Croft, really struggling here. The lighter, nimbler cars, like the Darien here, really much more in their element. And the big sheets of flame, giving away the fact that the Darien is very turbocharged. But I'm afraid no match with its little 2-litre turbo for the monster V8 in the front of the Gem Marsh designed LM600. So the Marcos picks up another place, and Simon Durden continues in the Zero car. There's the number 45 Bramley and Morris Lotus. Graham Morris started that one, and still battling away with the XJ220C. Those cars in their original guise battled at Le Mans for class honours. Birthday boy Wyn Percy leading the race in his Harrier, and the sister car just going ahead of the Lotus and Porsche battle here is the car of Michael Burgess and Chris Ward, sporting a new colour scheme, no longer the all-white machine. Unfortunately stricken with fuel injection and turbo problems in qualifying. The number 52 machine And here it is with Michael Vergers starting it, and the Dutchman will hand over to Chris Ward midway through the race. Win Percy 54 on race day and having a good run, whereas the 911 of Tim Sugden and Steve O'Rourke having a very bad run indeed. Their early season form and luck seem to have deserted them entirely. They're parked and out of the race. Back to the hairpin then with Nick Carr, and on to start-finish straight this time, heading for the pits. The first of the front runners to pit. Through the chicane he comes, bringing the 33 car to a halt. Nice little note on the pit board there, just to avoid getting run over. And the two cars we've just seen him work his way past continue on their way. Here comes the leader though, headlamps ablaze, now up among the top 10 runners as he starts his lappery of the field. Celebrating his 54th birthday, maybe with victory champagne, who knows? Not doing badly so far for an old bloke. From 48-year-old John Morrison, currently in second place, and challenged the 54-year-old leader of the race, Win Percy. Percy will hand over to the spring chicken of the quartet, and that's only 38-year-old Charlie Cox. What a youngster he is in comparison, eh? Still, the old bloke's not doing badly at all here. Ready to go now is Bob Sands in the number 33 Marcos. And while we're telling tales, Bob Sands is 40 years old as well. Off he goes in the LM600, being very careful about the speed limit within the pit lane. Now he can enlarge it, having crossed the end of the pit restriction. And there is Torquil Turing continuing in the De Tomaso Pantera. Now a lap ahead, but he will still have to pit. So the Marcos now with Win Percy right behind him, pulls over to one side and through goes Win Percy. The Dorset driver, a real long-distance expert, not just in sports cars, but also in saloon cars, has raced in the Spa 24-hour race. First, second and third place finishes at Bathurst in the 1,000 kilometres, not obviously in the same year, but a very, very experienced driver. And up against some fairly tough opposition here as well. Around the outside of our Marcos camera car goes the 911 GT1. Percy, meanwhile, is hounding Torquil Turing and looking for a place to pass. And it's among the traffic here that perhaps an opportunity will come to John Morrison to get back onto terms with Win Percy. You just need to catch a slower car at the wrong place, and suddenly a couple of second margin is handed back to your teammates. Andy Purvis leading this four-way battle. Purvis in the Marcos with the Vergers Harrier right behind him. And the team car of Nick Carr, and Bob Sands is in big trouble. Bob Sands has only just left the pits, struggling to keep the engine and the car going. Is he going for another lap? No, more sensibly heading for the pit lane. While he's rolling in neutral, an unexpected pit call for number 33. And I'm afraid, along with this problem, out of the window will go Nick Carr's hopes, slender as they were, of winning the GT2 class this season. Scheduled pit stop for the number 55 TBR. Colin Blower brings in the third place car, and Jamie Campbell-Walter ready to take over. And they are certainly well ahead of the opposition. And at the moment, so too is Win Percy. Percy has used the traffic to extend his gap over the second place 911. So John Morrison continues round. We'll hand over to John Greasley. And when Greasley and Charlie Cox are both at the wheel, there'll be still some work to do. Christian Van ready to jump in. Torquil Turing bails out quickly from the De Tomaso. And in comes Martin Kerner in the Lotus. Windscreen could do with a bit of a clean before Allard Kalf leaves. The De Tomaso safely serviced and on its way. And Win Percy continues. So Allard Kalf, former Grand Prix commentator and single-seater racer, touring car racer, in the car. A little bit of damage on the front of the Vergers Harrier, but it too continues. And having trouble keeping the engine alive. The team having to push start Allard Kalf, and it's taking an awfully long time. At this rate, they would have been quicker to try and start it with a spare battery. Allard on the starter as well. This is disaster. Seconds ticking away for the Dutch pairing. Now you can hear the Lotus four-cylinder revving. And Allard will be well fired up when he rejoins. Vincent Percy still going strong, hoping to hand over as big a lead as he can to Charlie Cox when he does come into the pits. But the 33 Marcos pushed out of the way and into retirement as the 62 car comes in. Richard Cabban bailing out to allow Ashley Ward to take over the seat. And here is the race leader. The number 2 Harrier comes in. Win Percy ready to hand over to Charlie Cox. And on continues John Morrison, taking over the lead now. Second time he's led this race, but the 911 must yet stop to hand over to John Greasley. So John Morrison now with Percy in the pits will have to make these couple of laps count. He has a fairly empty road ahead of him, and every 10th of a second could be vital at the end of the race. Morrison really piling on the pressure. Charlie Cox rejoins. A nice quick turnaround again from the Harrier crew. So the former touring car driver, Charlie Cox, started his career in Holden Commodores, went on to Escorts, and then raced in the British Touring Car Championship before coming into the GT circles. He back on track in the Harrier, and now it will be his turn to bed himself in as quickly as possible and really unwind the car in the next couple of laps, because into the pits comes the current race leader, the 911 GT1. John Morrison, hauled out by the shoulder straps. John Greasley, ready to insinuate himself into the narrow confines of this carbon fibre cockpit. Very, very high-tech piece of machinery. What a fabulous looking machine it is as well. The question is, can they do the job? Well, a good clean turnaround. TVR in first place at the moment, having stopped earlier on. So whether he'll be able to hold off the Harrier as Charlie Cox gets up to speed is an entirely different question. Certainly the Cerbera didn't seem to have the pace of the Harrier around the opening laps. So no problems for the Blue Coral car either. A nice smooth pit stop, and John Greasley now setting after the lead cars. No repetition of Allard Kalf's starting problem, so the Lotus, once it's running, clearly running fairly well. And the number 56 Marcos continues to grumble round. Ian Astley at the helm now. Good opening stint from Andy Purvis, and Astley very well matched in terms of driving ability. So the race now should come down, as it did in the early stages, to a straightforward battle between the Harrier and the Porsche. Charlie Cox, radio executive, company managing director now in the Harrier, and chasing him is the man who runs the Blue Coral team, John Greasley. Riding again aboard the Dutch-teamed Lotus. And with its superb chassis, making up for some of the shortfall in horsepower against the quicker cars in the championship here at the tight and demanding Croft circuit. It's certainly taken the GT1 Porsche a few laps to catch him, but problems there for the number 45 Lotus. Popping and banging, all is far from well. Well, Andrew Bramley hasn't had much of a stint at the wheel of the number 45 car, and the number 55 car is out of it as well. Oh dear. Well, just a few minutes of the race left, and Jamie Campbell-Walter and the TVR are out of their class lead and out of third position in the race. Onto the final lap then goes Wyn Percy. And he comfortably passes the Thomas and Jordan Darien. Into the lead in GT2, and third overall goes Allard Kalf in the Lotus. He's taken over from Martin Kerner. Charlie Cox continues the good work of Wyn Percy, and he'll win the GT1 category and win this race from John Greasley, who's taken over from John Morrison. GT2 going to the Kalf and Kerner.